Now this is an awesome cut for pulled beef, but stick around because in this video, I'm gonna show you how to smoke oyster blade like a brisket. All right, so to get started, we're gonna set our barbecue up. We're gonna be using the Oklahoma Joe's Bronco drum. We're gonna start by opening our lid, and we'll take our cooking grate off, and then we're gonna take our heat deflector out, and then you wanna fill your charcoal basket up with either lump charcoal or briquettes. And then we're going to bury a fire lighter in our briquettes. I like to use these wood wool fire lighters. They're all natural and they've got a really nice long burn time. And then we're going to light it up. All right, so we've got about 10 minutes before our briquettes are going to be ready. So we'll use that time to trim and season our oyster blade. Now we're working with a beautiful 2.8 kilo oyster blade. This is quite a big one. And we're just going to start by trimming this thick silver skin off the bottom. So I'm just going to get my knife underneath there. We want to try and take just the silver skin off. We don't want to dig into any meat that we don't have to be digging into. And just like a brisket, we want to be trimming this in a way where it's going to be nice, even and aerodynamic. And that way we're going to get a much more even cook on both ends of this oyster blade. So any kind of dangly bits, I'm going to trim off as well. That bottom side is looking really good. That thin end, I'm just going to square up a little bit. And don't throw that away. That will make some awesome burger mince, or oyster blade actually makes really good steaks as well. So if you want, you can save that, trim the fat off and silver skin if you want, and grill that up for a steak. And if you didn't know, oyster blade, when you take that seam out the middle, that's where your flat iron steaks come from. Some more sort of dangly bits here. We'll square up this thicker end. And this top section, I'm really happy with that fat coverage on top. It's just a tiny bit here I'll trim off just to even up. That is looking good. So I reckon we're ready to season this up. Now I know I use this combination a lot when I'm cooking beef, but seriously, I just can't go past it. I'm gonna be using a combination of my steak shooter, and then I'm gonna top it off with beef bounce. But before I season it up, we're just gonna give it a nice light coat in some yellow mustard, which is just gonna help our rubs stick to the meat. And because steak shooter's a finer rub, we're just gonna go down with that first. We're gonna give it a nice light coat. And steak shooter's got some beautiful savory flavors with a hint of sweetness. So we're just going to give this a nice, light, even coverage all over. And then beef bounce is going to give us a nice bark, and it's got some beautiful beefy umami flavors in there as well. And then we're just going to mop up any rub we've got on the cutting board. All right, this is looking good, and that's going to be ready to go once our smoker's ready. And now our briquettes are burning nicely. We're going to shut our lid, and we're going to open up both of our vents, and then we'll bring our barbecue up to temperature, which for this cook is going to be around 250 Fahrenheit or 120 Celsius. All right, now we're up to temperature. We're going to open our lid, and I'm going to get a nice chunk of cherry straight on where that fire's burning. And then we are going to get our heat deflector back in position, and then we'll get our cooking grate back on, and then our beautiful oyster blade. And then we can shut our lid and let this start smoking away. Now, obviously, while we had our lid open, our temperatures dropped. So once our temperature recovers back up to that 250 Fahrenheit or 120 Celsius, I'm going to shut our intake vent down to around there. Then I'll give our barbecue around 10 minutes to see where it stabilizes off at. And if I need to increase temperature, I'll open it up a bit. If I need to decrease, I'll just shut it down a little bit. But for now, I'll leave that open. My top vent is going to stay open for the whole cook, and we're going to let this smoke away. All right, it hasn't even been half an hour since we got our oyster blade on, and we're sitting steady around that 250 Fahrenheit or 120 Celsius. This is where I've got my vent sitting. And now our smoker temperature is sitting nice and stable. There's not much else we need to do for the first hour and a half to 2 hours of this cook. All I want to do is get this oyster blade to a stage where that rub is set on the meat, and we've got a really nice color on it as well. All right, so we're just over 2 hours into this cook now, and this oyster blade is looking really nice. Now there's still a little bit of rub coming off of my finger, so I reckon we're gonna let this keep going, and we'll check back in once we're a bit further into this cook. All right, so it's been another hour, so we're around 3 hours into this cook, and this is looking much better. Let's just have a check of our internal temperature. We're sitting right around 71-ish degrees Celsius, or around 160 Fahrenheit. The color and bark is looking awesome. So we're going to get this out and onto some foil. And then we've got some butter here I'm just going to put on top. And then we're just going to pour some beef stock over. Now you don't have to use this if you've got some beef tallow. That's absolutely perfect for this. Or if you just want to use a bit of extra butter, you can do that as well. But that is half a cup of beef stock. And then we're going to wrap it up nice and tight. And I get asked quite often what sort of foil I use. I actually use the Kirkland brand foil from Costco. I think it's really tough, strong, and it's not too thick. Some of the cheaper sort of foils are hard to bend, but this molds to whatever you're wrapping really nicely. And now this is wrapped up. Get it back in the smoker. and we'll shut our lid. And just like a brisket, now our oyster blade is wrapped up, all we need to do now is take it to an internal temperature of around 205 Fahrenheit or 96 degrees Celsius, and then we can start checking for probe tenderness. I reckon that's going to take another 2 hours or so to get there, so if you've got a meat thermometer, now's a good time to put one in. All right, now we've been wrapped up for about 1 hour 45 now, so we're almost 5 hours into this cook. So we're just going to open up this foil and we're going to have a probe around. Looks like we've got a little split in the fat on top, but that's all right. You can't help that sometimes. That's probing quite nice, actually. This might be done. What are we sitting at? Sitting right around where we want to be at, around it's 95 Celsius or around 205 Fahrenheit. Just going to open it up a little bit more, and we just want to be probing all over just to make sure we've got no resistance in any part of this oyster blade, just like we would a brisket. And I'm really happy with that texture. It's not soft enough that it's just going to fall apart, but it is nice and soft that we're going to get those nice tender slices. If you're a beginner, it might take a little while for you to get used to that probe tenderness feel, but for now, just to get some bark and colour back on top, I'm just going to fold this foil up around our oyster blade, then we'll shut our lid, we'll give it 10 minutes, and then we'll get it out. And after 10 minutes, we've got some great colour back on our oyster blade, so what we can do now is carefully take it out and we'll get it on our cutting bench. And then all I'm going to do now is just leave this foil open so our oyster blade can steam off. That'll stop the cooking process. Then after about 5 minutes, I'll just loosely cover it back over. I'm going to let it rest for around half an hour to 45 minutes, and then we'll come back to slice it up. And now we're done with the drum, we can shut our lid, we'll close down both of our vents. That's going to kill the fire, and then any unburnt briquettes left over, we can use in our next cook. All right, and after a nice little rest, let's get this out and slice it up. Have a look at that. Juicy as. Great bark on there. Some great texture as well. Let's have a quick taste. That's so good. Tender, juicy, great flavour. Like I said earlier in the video, that steak shooter and beef bounce is such a good combination. And that gristle in the middle of the oyster blade, that just turns to jelly. It's still edible, but if you don't like it, you can just eat around it. All right, and then as I'm slicing it, I'm just gonna put the slices in this wrap juice, and that's just gonna help keep them nice and juicy, because what I'm gonna do later is vac seal this all up into portions. And that is just nice and juicy from end to end, nice and tender. That's sliced amazing as well. So I'm going to save a couple of slices. I'll show you what I'm going to do with them. And then I'm going to put the rest in these wrap juices. So nice and simple. Some of that oyster blade, thinly sliced white onion, pickles, and then some of my hook shot, jalapeno and whiskey barbecue sauce. Such a good, simple combination. So there you have it. There's how to smoke an oyster blade like a brisket. So if you've got an oyster blade laying around, definitely give this a shot. Like I said, I'm just going to vac seal the rest of that, and then I've got some leftovers. If you want to see a video on how I vac seal and reheat and do all of that, let me know in the comments below. But for now, that's the end of the video. So if you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.